Hello, friend. Are there conversations that you would like to have, but you avoid because it's too uncomfortable for you to have them? In today's episode, I'll share 6 steps to conducting successful, difficult conversations. Welcome to the Free Me from OCD podcast. We're here to offer educational resources, coaching, and community support to help you say yes to your life by saying no to OCD. I'm Dr. Vicki Rackner, your podcast host and OCD coach. I call on my experience as a mother of a son diagnosed with OCD when he was in college, surgeon, and certified life coach to help you get in the driver's seat of your life. My vision is to help you move towards a future in which OCD is nothing more than the background noise of your full life. This information is intended as an adjunct and not a substitute for therapy. Let's dive in. Do you have conversations you know you want to have, but you avoid because you don't like conflict or uncomfortable feelings? Many of us avoid scary conversations because it seems too dangerous. We feel poorly equipped to have them. You may also see the consequences of your inaction. Things might continue to fester, and it can contaminate other areas of your life. Today, I'd like to offer you 6 steps for initiating and conducting successful conversations, no matter how scary or difficult. First, I'll list the 6 steps. Then I'll illustrate each step with examples. Okay, so here are the 6 steps. Step number 1, know your why. Identify the reason you're having this conversation and how you'll figure out if it was successful. Step number 2, get to calm. Avoid conversations when your nervous system is dysregulated. Step number 3, do your homework. Step number 4, map it out, know what you're going to say. Step number 5, do it. And step number 6 is debrief. Do some Monday morning quarterbacking so the next conversation will be easier. All right, now let's dive into each of the 6 steps. Step number 1, know your why. Ask yourself, what am I hoping to accomplish with this conversation? And how will I know if I'm successful? And let's take a specific example. For Melissa, the words, "that's just so OCD," are like fingernails on a chalkboard, while the words, "that's so OCD," are often meant as a compliment. Melissa knows that there's nothing attractive or desirable about OCD. She's witnessed in her own home that unmanaged OCD erodes lives. Melissa decides that she will no longer remain silent when she hears those words, "that's so OCD." She's going to speak up. So here are a few reasons to engage in a difficult conversation. The first is to educate. Maybe Melissa is having lunch with a coworker who pulls out her phone and shows a picture of an organized kitchen and says, "how OCD." Melissa could say, "wow, it would be great to have that level of organization in my kitchen." You also know, though, that there's a difference between someone who's organized and someone with OCD. Some people with OCD don't even have organized spaces. The statement, "that's so OCD," just respects the true struggles of someone with OCD. Maybe you want to clear the air. Maybe Melissa finds herself withdrawing from a friend who says that's so OCD. She wants to reconnect with her friend, but to move forward, she can no longer remain silent about her friend's clumsy and insensitive comments about OCD. Maybe you simply want to understand somebody. Maybe Melissa is genuinely curious about how others understand what OCD is. You might want to make a request. Maybe Melissa has a conversation with her employee and says, "I noticed that in the Zoom meeting you saw Sam's organized office and commented, 'that's so OCD.'" Now, I understand that you intended this as a compliment. However, there's a difference between organization and OCD. OCD is a debilitating disorder. Out of respect for those with OCD, please refrain from using the language, "That's so OCD." You might want to set a boundary. Let's say Melissa has already spoken with this employee in which she made her request to avoid this language, which the employee ignores. Melissa could then inform this employee that if she continues to use the phrase, "That's so OCD," she runs the risk of employment consequences, maybe probation or even termination. Now, I just want to point out, you cannot control the actions of others, like the words that they use. However, you can set personal boundaries between what you can accept and what you cannot accept. You can also lay out what you will do differently if a boundary is violated. You'll leave the room, you'll end the friendship, you'll terminate an employee. Maybe you want to show somebody you care about what's in their blind spot. I remember being in New York on a windy fall evening. I was wearing a dress and a hip-length coat. A police officer pulled me aside and let me know that my dress was hoisted up in the back really far. Now that's something I wanted to know. So that's the way to have a clean conversation. But sometimes the motivation is not so clean. You may be thinking about a difficult conversation because you want to feel better. And you believe that if your conversation partner says or does something differently, it will be different for you. Brian told me, I need this person to apologize before I can move on, and I really want to move on. Well, Brian can certainly make the request for an apology. The truth is that Brian can move forward by making the choice to forgive, regardless of whether or not that other person offers him an apology. Forgiveness is the process of accepting the past as it was, without an urge to go back and make it different. Forgiveness is an inside job. By understanding that your thoughts create your feelings and that you are in control of your thoughts, you are empowered. The idea that your feelings depend on your circumstances or the actions of others is disempowering. Last, our human brains find the idea of revenge attractive. Some people engage in conversations to punish a person they think inflicted pain on them. You hurt me, and now I'm going to hurt you. This is downright dirty, and I recommend against it. So now, once you have clarity about what your goal is, you have a way of determining how successful the conversation was. The best reason to initiate a conversation is this. You're being the kind of person or parent or partner or friend or employer you want to be. You can say, I'm the kind of person who tells somebody if their fly's down, if they have spinach in their teeth. I would want my friends to do the same thing for me. That's the way to have a clean conversation. As you go through this step of figuring out, well, why do I want to have this conversation? You might discover that you don't need to have this conversation at all. Maybe you need to do your own self-coaching to consider what thoughts will create the feelings that inspire the actions that help you get your desired result. Step number 2, get to calm. You will be tempted to jump in and have difficult conversations right there and then in the heat of the moment. This is usually a bad idea. Avoid conversations when your nervous system is dysregulated. Let me give you an example. A few weeks ago, my son flew out to spend some time with me. He was excited about this job he had taken on, cutting down 2 70-year-old pines on my property that had died. We had purchased a chainsaw in his last visit, but we ran out of time. So I offered to pay for my son's plane ticket, and he accepted. I gave him my credit card information and suggested he book the flights that worked for him and his schedule. Then he let me know that day that he'd booked the tickets and told me the travel days. I asked him to forward me his itinerary. When he finally forwarded the flight information several days later, I saw red. I do a fair amount of traveling for business, and I knew this flight should be in the $300 range. He paid almost $600 for this flight. So I wanted to have 2 conversations with my son. The first was urgent. What were our options for dealing with this ticket that he had already purchased? Could we cancel them and rebook? Second, how in the world did he research flights and choose this one? It takes a bit of talent to identify a flight that's twice as expensive as all the others. Unfortunately for me, I rolled both of these conversations into the same call I impulsively made, with the full arsenal of anger chemicals coursing through my veins. The conversation did not go well. Yes, my son recognized that he made a mistake. However, he also felt attacked. Now we had a rupture in our relationship that needed to be repaired. I wish I had gotten to calm before I picked up the phone. Had I been calm, I would have read the terms of the ticket and seen that this was a non-refundable ticket after the first 24 hours. There was no urgency to act. No action was possible. Had I been calm, I would have taken responsibility for my own contributions to the situation. I could have said to my son before he booked the flight, look, I've flown this flight lots of times and the fare should be around $280. Now check out Sun Country. They have good fares and it's easier to get in and out of Terminal 2 with their smaller volume and shorter lines. Had I been calm, I would have reminded myself that my son has lots of options about what to do with his vacation days, and he chose to spend them with me. Had I been calm, I could have compared this extra $300 to the cost of hiring somebody to come and cut down the trees. Had I been calm, I would have asked myself, what's the true cost of repeatedly requesting that my son make reservations early to avoid the higher airfares? What's the true cost of nagging him to get the reservations to me within 24 hours? Well, it's much higher than $300. Had I been calm, I would have had perspective. In the scheme of life, $300 is a fair tuition to pay for the important life lesson about how to make smart purchasing choices. Get to calm before you initiate difficult conversations. And if somebody invites you into a difficult conversation and you're angry, say, I'm so glad you brought this up. I'm interested in having this conversation with you, but this is not a good time. How about tomorrow or next week? So you have a sense of how long it will take you to get to calm. Step number 3, do your homework. You prepare for important conversations like job interviews or requests for a raise or presentations you deliver. You can prepare for difficult conversations too. Here's how. You can arm yourself with the facts. What was actually said and done in this situation? Distinguish between what really happened and your interpretation of what happened. This helps you avoid the kinds of generalizations that often inflame rather than calm strong feelings. Melissa could say, you've used the phrase "that's so OCD" 3 times in the past week. I could have said to my son, you just paid $600 for a flight I generally book for about $300. Next, get curious about your own strong feelings. Melissa and I did some coaching around her response to hearing the words, "that's so OCD." I asked her, why do those 3 words, "that's so OCD," leave you feeling irate? She discovered that she's really angry that it took 5 years before her daughter was diagnosed with OCD. The thought that triggers Melissa's anger is this: healthcare professionals should make a timely diagnosis of OCD. Melissa said, I have a friend who sued her doctor because of the delay in making the diagnosis of her breast cancer. How is OCD different than breast cancer? And in general, arguing with your circumstances is an exercise in futility. Melissa is annoyed that so many people know so little about OCD. But what lay people think is not the true source of the anger. Lashing out at a friend or stranger or coworker who says, "that's so OCD," is like coming home from a hard day at work and kicking the dog. Melissa started practicing the thought from Maya Angelou. When people know better, they do better. This helped her get to calm and put another person's casual comment into perspective. They just don't know better. Let me educate them. Next, plan for another person's strong feelings. As you run through the ideal conversation in your head, here's the common fantasy. Your conversation partner says in gratitude, "You are so right about everything you brought up in this conversation. I'm going to change what I say and do based on your wise insights." Well, that might happen once in a while. However, chances are good that the other person will express anger or sadness or guilt or shame or remorse. You might avoid difficult conversations because you want to avoid circumstances that elicit another person's strong feeling. You can practice the thought, this person is allowed to have any feeling they have. I am safe. And remember, we avoid difficult conversations because we perceive them as dangerous. You are safe. Return to your reason for having this conversation. You're doing this because you care about this person and you want to get connected more deeply. I want to say as an aside that there may be situations in which it is not safe to have a difficult conversation. If you are in an abusive relationship or in a relationship with somebody with a personality disorder like a sociopath or a psychopath, you want to be very careful. So have some insight, distinguish between what's scary and what's unsafe. Next, plan for the other person to play offense or defense. As you share your ideas, the other person may go on the offense and attack you. Practice staying calm and not going on the defense. Somebody might say to Melissa, saying, "That's so OCD is not a big deal. Everyone says it. Stop being so sensitive." Well, if there's a part of Melissa that believes she is too sensitive, those words could hurt. She could diffuse this by saying, "You're right. I am sensitive." Think of the 4th of July fireworks. They make a big splash and sound for a few seconds. Then they're gone. You can receive attacks with, "You're right. I'm very particular about language for a good reason." Words are powerful. Next, decide how vulnerable you want to be. If you really want to change the way somebody thinks or acts, stories are your tool. The best way to help somebody understand the impact of OCD is to tell stories. You could tell somebody about how OCD has impacted your own life, of course with permission from the person with OCD first. And you might have different conversations with a partner or a friend or a coworker. You might be willing to disclose different things to different people. Let's say one of your employees who's managing OCD complains about their coworkers saying, "That's so OCD." If this employee is open to the idea, you might invite her to share what it's like to live with OCD with the other members of the team. Now remember, there has to be a lot of trust built up before you could ask somebody to be vulnerable like that. Next, think about timing. Be sensitive to the best time to initiate a conversation. When you do your homework, you might decide that not saying anything is the best choice. You don't need to comment on every social post that says, "That's so OCD." Or maybe you got a response like, "Perfectionism is different than OCD. People with OCD suffer. Please do not make OCD a punchline." Here's where you can go to learn more about this debilitating condition. So you don't really have to think about it. You just cut and paste. It's important to do your own thought work so you can communicate cleanly. Let's say you want to set a new boundary about your role in your child's compulsions. Your child might have told you, "If you loved me, you'd help me." And what they mean is if you love them, you would complete the compulsions so their lives would be easier. If there's even a teeny part of you that believes this to be true, You might not yet be ready for this conversation. You want to have clarity about what it means to be a loving parent to your child. Step number 4, map out the conversation. Here's a great way to begin a conversation. Say, I want to have a conversation with you. My message is hard for me to say, and it might be hard for you to hear. Is this a good time? Then give a 1-sentence summary. I'd like to discuss your understanding of OCD. Then deliver the facts. 3 times you said, that's so OCD in meetings. Then you can go on and express curiosity. I'm just curious. Do you think somebody with an organized kitchen has OCD? Or maybe you express confusion. Juxtapose the action of this person's ideal self with their real self. Say, I'm confused. You're so caring. You're always thinking about other people's needs. How is it that you could say something that could potentially hurt somebody already struggling with OCD? Or, I'm confused about how and why you act out of alignment when it comes to people struggling with OCD. Can you help me understand? Step number 5, do it. There may have been good reasons you avoided difficult conversations in the past. It's usually because you fear what's going to happen. The best way to get better at anything that's hard is just to do it. Step number 6, debrief. There's a reason professional athletes review their performances. It's a way of getting better. You can get better at difficult conversations. Monday morning quarterbacking will help you get there. Are there phrases that you want to use next time? Are there different things that you could tweak? You might be thinking, but Dr. Vicki, I want to address something that's much more serious than a stranger saying, that's so OCD. I want to set new boundaries with my child and let them know I'm no longer going to participate in their compulsions. That is a much bigger deal. And I fear it's going to break my relationship with my adult child. So I just remain silent. Well, no matter what the topic is, you go through the same 6 steps. Remind yourself why you're having the conversation. It's usually because you want your actions to align with the best version of yourself. You can practice the thought, I'm doing everything I can to help my child be freed from OCD. That is how I'm choosing to express my love. So let's quickly recap the 6 steps of conducting a successful conversation. Step number 1, know your why. Identify the reason you're having this conversation and know how you'll measure success. Step number 2, get to calm. Avoid conversations when your nervous system is dysregulated. Step number 3, do your homework. Step number 4, map it out. Write out a script, know what you're going to say. Think through various scenarios and know how you're going to respond if your conversation partner says this or does that. Step number 5, do it. And step number 6, debrief. Get support. Get practice. Adopt new empowering thoughts. Every difficult conversation you have makes it easier to have that next conversation. With these 6 steps, you no longer have to fear difficult conversations. You have the best chance of success if you show up with a calm, open heart, regulated emotions, and with a spirit of curiosity. Well, thank you again for your listening ear and your commitment to yourself and the people you love. Please leave a review. It will help others like you find this podcast and benefit from the ideas you're hearing. And if no one has told you yet today, I admire your courage. Managing OCD may be the hardest job I've taken on. Whether you're an OCD warrior or an OCD caregiver champion, you are not alone. There's hope for a better tomorrow. You got this.